This morning, in fifth Sunday of Lent, the fifth I am statement that we will be looking at together is, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me will not die. And the story around this I am statement is the story of Lazarus. You know, the man that Jesus raised from the dead. And most of us, on hearing this news, might be thinking to ourselves, great, I can check out for the next 20 minutes or so because I know this story. I got it. Here's our challenge, church. Don't do it. Don't check out. This is an amazing story that's full of surprises. Consider with me this morning how the sisters of this dead man must have felt. Perhaps they expected their dead brother to remain, dead. And here comes this rabbi, their friend, who says to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. If you believe in me, you'll never die. Do you believe it? At the burning bush with Moses, God said, take off your sandals because the place where you are standing is holy ground. Because we believe that God speaks to us today in Scripture, just as he spoke to Moses in that burning bush, our tradition for Lent has been to take our shoes off. I have high maintenance shoes, so I already took them off. I invite you to do that if you can do so as an act of worship and without offense to your neighbor. We're in John chapter 11 today, and part of it I will just speak in my own words, and part of it we will read, and you might want to just have it open on your lap so that you can participate as your mind needs to. Lord, be with us as we open this, your word. Allow us to be surprised and cause it to matter in our lives. Amen. Jesus of Nazareth had friends. Jesus of Nazareth had friends, not just disciples. Mary and Martha and their brother Lazarus lived in a town called Bethany, and it was just a couple of miles outside of Jerusalem. And so I think when Jesus and his disciples went in and out of Jerusalem for different festivals, they often stopped in and visited this family. You may recall in Luke chapter 10, the account of Jesus having dinner at their house when Martha got stuck doing all the work, and Mary was just sitting at Jesus' feet, wasting time. I love that passage. I love it because it shows us a glimpse of ourselves, and it tells me that I'm not the only one who gets chippy when I think I'm doing all the work around here. And it also tells me that Jesus interacted with people not as he would have them, but as they are. Fast forward, John chapter 11. Jesus is near the end of his ministry, and last week we were in John 10, and our guest preacher, Mark Roberts, told us about when he was in Jerusalem. He told the people he was the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd, he said, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And he said, I came so that you would have life to its fullest. And the way he spoke really ticked off the leaders. Do you remember? They took up stones to kill him. And then he ticked them off even more, and they decided to arrest him. But, as we read so often in the Gospel of John, his time had not yet come. So he got out of there. And he kind of crossed state lines. He went out of the region of Judea, over across the Jordan River, where he could be out of harm's way. And from there, he healed people and taught, and great crowds came to them. But while he was across the Jordan River, he was far from his friends, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. While he was there, across the Jordan, Lazarus fell gravely ill. So ill that the sisters decided to send for Jesus. They knew it would be dangerous for Jesus to come to their town, and they knew that their brother was in danger of death. And they were pretty sure that Jesus could heal him. And so they sent a courier. Lord, the one who you love is sick. Subtext, please come, help, we need you. And in verse 4, Jesus says, this sickness will not end in death. No, it's for God's glory so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus did not immediately go to Bethany to heal his friend. Jesus did not say to the courier, "Oh, I got this, he's healed, go on back home. He'll be fine when you get there," as he could have done. Jesus did not drop everything, as we sometimes expect our friends to do when we need them gravely, and when we tell them that we need them gravely. In verse 5 and 6, we read it this way: "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister, and he loved Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days." What? Why would he do that? Well, he seemed to have something else in mind. And then, after 2 days, knowing that there was a warrant out for his arrest, after 2 days, when Lazarus was already gone, when it was too late, he said, "Let's go back to Judea." And verse 8, "But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, and you want to go back?" So, first we read that Jesus really loves this family, that they are his friends, and that they asked him to come and help. And he did not. He waited. And then we are reminded that the Jewish leaders want to stone Jesus, so it would be way too dangerous for him to go back, and so he'll go back. Isn't that curious? There's a conversation that Jesus has with his disciples in verses 12 to 14. We're going to just jump right over it. But basically, they're saying, "Don't do it." And Jesus is saying, "Oh, there's still time. We're going back. We're going to go find my friends because I know I can do it. And so let us go to him," he said in verse 18. And then in verse 17, in verse 18, Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Well, let's go too, so that we can die with him." I love that. All right, we might as well go. This is it. It's no small thing that Jesus decided to go back to Bethany, so close to Jerusalem, where there very well may be some officials who want to arrest him. And they don't just want him in jail, they want him dead. Verse 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Hebrew tradition tells us that once a person dies, their soul sort of hangs out for 3 days. This is not in Scripture, but it's tradition. So that on the 4th day, you can be sure, you can be certain that there is no more hope, and this person is gone. Verse 18, "Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them on the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know, even now, God will give you whatever you ask." Let's pause here. Martha wanted to see Jesus, and when she sees him, she basically says, "I'm mad at you. I sent for you. You're my friend. You could have done something. Even now I know you can do something, but I'm really mad at you. Please, can you do something? Where were you? You should have been here. It's too late. It's not too late. You can do something." She's speaking her mind to Jesus. Out of her grief, she's being honestly, I interpret this as honestly angry with him in a deep state of grief. And in verse 23, Jesus says to Martha what grief specialists say we should never say to people who've just lost someone. Something to the effect of, "Oh, well, he's in a better place." You don't want to hear that when a beloved dies. You don't want them in a better place. You want them with you. Verse 23, Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha answers, "I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day." So he responds on his level, but she's not able to enter his level because all she knows is her brother is dead, and she kind of thinks it's his fault. And he's saying, "Right, it'll be fine. He'll rise again." And instead of challenging him, she goes into the platitudes that we so often hear in a receiving line at a funeral. Oh, he's in a better place. Yes, I know. Heaven is better for having him. I know he'll rise again. Politely, she responds. Yes, yes, he's going to heaven. Verse 25. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Martha, do you believe this? He's not letting go of this pattern. Verse 27, yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here and he's asking for you. Such an interesting encounter. She runs out to meet him. She's honest with him about her disappointment, and then he starts in on the what not to say. He's in a better place. I know. I'm the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? Jesus is trying to get through to her, but I believe that in her grief, she cannot see the very real thing that he is offering. She thinks he's talking about pie in the sky and the great by and by, and I read her as a little annoyed. Not everyone reads her as annoyed. I read her as annoyed. Yes, I believe it. I believe you're the Messiah, Son of God. Profound confession of faith here. But what happens next? Yes, I believe that you're the Messiah, the one who is to come, and then she leaves him. She doesn't stick around to talk about it with him. And she goes back home. And it's almost like, when somebody calls that you don't really want to talk to, and you say, oh, you really want to talk to my sister here. She runs back home. Mary, teacher's here, and he's asking for you. Did you see him ask for Mary anywhere? No. He didn't say that. He said, Martha, I'm the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? Go get your sister. No. Do you believe this? Yes, I believe this. See you later. Here's Mary. In other news, I think she's brushing him off. I think she's too frustrated to stay there 1 minute longer. My brother's dead, and all you can talk about is yourself. Have you ever been disappointed in a friend? Martha has. Have you ever been disappointed in God? Martha has. And she goes home. Maybe she thinks Jesus will stay for dinner and they'll chat around the table as people do, sharing stories and crying. Meanwhile, Mary, he's asking for you. There's the handoff. Verse 29. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but he was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. This was a traditional thing that happened in this day and in this time. There would be sort of a grief posse with you. You would be surrounded by close friends and people who would share your grief and follow you where you go when you're in the throes of it, when it's so raw. Verse 32, when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, and she said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Same words, different posture. Do you hear it? Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Falling at his feet. The response is different. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. He doesn't try to explain himself. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Jesus' interaction with Martha was different than his interaction with Mary. It seems to me that he met them each where they were. Martha in her grief that was laced with hurt and anger and no small amount of blame. Mary in her grief with profound sadness. He responded to Martha by telling her who he was. Perhaps he was trying to let her in on what he was about to do. He responded to Mary with his own grief. This verse, Jesus wept, not just the thing of Sunday schools where you can memorize one verse in 2 words. This word wept, it doesn't just mean he had a trickle running down his cheek. This word is a word of deep bereavement. It's that same kind of weeping that we have the words for the wailing wall. He wailed. He was frustrated. There was anger woven into this sorrow. So, what was he frustrated about? I don't know. Was he sad that his friend died? Was he frustrated by the conundrum of mortality? Did he know he was going to die soon and he didn't like that he had to do that? The disappointment of his friends not being understood. We see him weep again in Matthew 23 and also in Luke when he's about to enter Jerusalem for the last time. Luke 19, if only you had known what would have brought you peace. Matthew, how often would I have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings? Jesus weeps. And they go to the tomb, because that's what you do. And Martha is there, and Mary is there, and the mourners are there. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. Okay, who does that? Let's just pause right there. Who does that? Why? Take away the stone, he says. But Lord, says Martha, who actually has her wits about her, right? By this time, there's a bad odor. He's been there for 4 days. Take away the stone. Verse 40, then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So, they took away the stone. What kind of authority was in his voice that he talked to those people into rolling a stone away from a tomb? Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I say this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Louder than an alarm clock on spring forward day. And the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. And Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Surprise! On the back of your bulletin, I had a picture printed of an interpretation of Lazarus, and this is definitely not what he looked like, but I loved it because it shows how wrapped up he was. He has one free hand and his eyes are free, but you can see that he's not going to get out of that conundrum by himself. Martha, the one you were disappointed in, the one who seemed to say the wrong things, the one who you love, that one has dominion over death. I want to notice 3 things about this final section, and just very briefly. Jesus commands 3 things. 1, he says, take away the stone. 2, he says, come out. And 3, he says, take off the grave clothes or unbind him. I believe that when Jesus said to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life, he's also saying to us, I am the resurrection and the life. And so often we're just like Martha, and we say, right, God, thanks for that. I totally believe you, but I got to go bury some things, right? Things in my life that are kind of rotten, and I've rolled a stone in front of it, and I definitely don't want you rolling that stone away because I've gotten used to it. Maybe a relationship or a job or a season of our life that's not going to return. We seal hope away. And Jesus says, roll away the stone. And we say, what? You don't want us to open that part of our life back up. I don't think so. There's rot behind that stone. That part of my life is sealed away. No way. And Jesus said, well, abundant life, didn't I tell you? If you believe, you'll see the glory of God. And did you notice in this passage that the community was important? Mary didn't roll the stone away. Martha did not roll the stone away. Lazarus didn't roll the stone away. Jesus didn't roll the stone away. Who rolled the stone? The people together rolled the stone away. And then Lazarus, come out. I wonder about Lazarus. What about him? This one was dead and expected to stay dead. Pastor out of Colorado named Nadia Bowles-Weber has some reflections on him. This is what she says. I can't imagine Lazarus expected to be raised from the dead. So when Jesus called his name and he walked out of his own tomb, when his eyes opened unexpectedly, I'm sure he didn't know how to shield them. I can't help but wonder how much the transition from the deep darkness of a grave to the light of living day must have been painful. He, like his sisters, had to have been surprised by the suddenness of dawn. That's the thing about tombs. Sometimes we don't even know that we're in them until the light breaks in. But we all have them. Having a God of resurrection means that the story is seldom over when we think it is. Lazarus, come out, roll away the stone, and take off the grave clothes, unbind him. This is another place where Christ calls us to be a part of the redemption. Lazarus did not come out of that tomb shiny and new in a resurrected body the way that Jesus did when he was resurrected. He's still wrapped in his burial clothes. Sort of zombie apocalypse-like, I think. Would have been tough for him to move on his own. We're called to help each other come out of the rot. We're called to help each other come out of the places that we're bound so tightly that we can't unbind ourselves. Jesus resurrects, and then we get to be there for those as they realize resurrection life. And there is nothing more beautiful than to bear witness to the Lazarus in us, in our community, when their bindings come unloosed. And that, ideally, is what happens in our lives as a church together. Small group, celebrate recovery, MOPS, worship, pivot. We see life where there once was only death. We see hope where that hope has been sealed off. So the question is, what does it mean that he is the resurrection and the life? What have you buried away? What might Jesus be asking you to roll a stone away from? Who in your life has come back from some kind of death constrained by wrappings? How brave it is to respond when Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. How brave it is to trust the community to unbind us. I think that's our challenge, church. To hear the words that Jesus spoke to Martha and to understand that he's speaking them to us. I am the resurrection and the life. I've come to give you abundant life. Roll away the stone. Come out and unbind. Do you believe it? Amen.